And we're live. Okay, so the very first Help Me to Parent Facebook Live coffee morning is on. So yeah, I've never done a Facebook Live before, so it's going to be an uh, interesting time. So I suppose what I want to do is kind of get people interested or speaking about questions that they might have around any parenting issues that are going on. Some people are interested in this because they can't maybe reach one of our parenting courses, or there's just some small little tweaks that they want to make. So what we wanted to do was try and make this as accessible as possible. Here I am in the Help Me to Parent hub, as we're going to call it. And I want to thank everyone who liked and shared the original post. And I also want to say thanks a million to those who sent in questions. So I suppose first things first, what we can do is we can crack in with some of the questions that have been sent in already. So let me have a look at this one. First up, Virginia, thanks very much for your question. So my son has made a lot of progress over the years, but there is one thing we are struggling with. He refuses to take responsibility for his actions and somehow finds a way to blame others. My husband and I have addressed this several times, but it continues to happen. He's admitted to us it's about wanting to be right. How can we teach him to take responsibility or accountability for his negative behaviours? It's very frustrating since we want him to learn from his mistakes, but he refuses to admit he was ever wrong. I'm looking forward to your words of wisdom. Well, I don't know about that, Virginia, but hopefully it might be of some benefit to you. I suppose one of the things I don't know, first off, is how old your son is, which would, I suppose, dictate maybe the answer to some extent. But the big thing is kids learn to take responsibility by being given responsibility, and not just responsibility to adults. So if your son is maybe 11, 12, 13 years of age, I suppose when we were younger, we could go get a job at 12, 13 years of age. And that way we had some responsibility to somebody else outside of our family, which is a really important thing, because not only does it teach us that we have something to contribute outside of the family home, but it also teaches us that somebody else thinks that we have enough about us, that we're useful, that we have something to contribute. So I suppose if your son is in around that age, 10 to 12, maybe 13, start to get him thinking about other people. So could he look at raising some money for a local charity? Could he give some of his old presents and stuff like that to charity? But also, could he maybe get a little part-time job? Not something where he's getting paid. We're not going to break the law here, but maybe he could, get a little job helping on a farm, or in a friend's house or something like that. So where he has that bit of responsibility. The other thing I would suggest is there's a great thing that I use called the Karpman Drama Triangle, and some people may have heard of it before, but it's a really, really good thing. So the negative triangle, we have the rescuer, the persecutor, and the victim. So the victim is the person who always has things going wrong. So it's poor me, poor me, poor me all the time. And then the victim gets annoyed and frustrated, and then they jump into the persecutor and they take things out. And it sounds like, maybe your son is in the victim persecutor role, where he's jumping in between both of those. Generally, I would come across a lot of teenagers jump from victim to persecutor, where they justify a reason for being not nice to other people or to lash out at other people. So I would certainly say check out the drama triangle. There is a positive triangle. So instead of being a victim, you can be vulnerable. Or instead of being a persecutor, you can be potent or be assertive. So I suppose, in a roundabout way, what I'm saying is, maybe life is going to teach him about taking responsibility as much as you guys are. So it might be a case that, he goes outside of the house and somebody punches him square in the face, because we have to remember that that's life. Life is not all about wrapping kids up in a bubble. And I suppose I'm skipping ahead to one of the questions that we have, but we need to sometimes let our children get the punch in the face, the metaphorical punch in the face, because if we try and wrap them up, life when they get older is going to do it for them. So I suppose maybe allow him to live with the consequences of his actions for not taking responsibility for himself. I hope that's of some help, Virginia. Next up, how can I build resilience in my child? This is one of those ones that comes up an awful lot, and it is linked to what I've just been talking about. But resilience is something that we talk about. Self-esteem is something we talk about. We talk about self-confidence and wanting our children to believe in themselves, and that's all well and good. But the difficulty is, how do we actually do it? And I think things like responsibility, giving our children responsibility for themselves and for other things. So, chores, looking after pets, looking after that kind of thing, is all about helping them, showing them that they have something to contribute. Again, we're coming back to the contribution. We all need to know that we are worthwhile, that we have something that the world needs, because the people who struggle the most are the ones who feel that they have no purpose or they have no use in this world. So if from a young age we can start to let our kids know that it is important that we do all contribute. And, going back to the work thing, I still remember getting my first £10 pay check from my Saturday job when I was 12 or 13 years of age. And, I felt like I was the richest man in the world, and it was like coming home going, Mom, Dad, I don't need your cash no more. I got my own money. But I think what it did was it allowed me to feel that there was worth in what I had, which is really, really important. And some adults don't feel that way. So I think with kids, allow them that responsibility. The other thing I'd say in terms of building resilience, and it's something that a lot of people talk about when it comes to millennials, is that, well, they've been wrapped in a bubble for too long, but that's not their fault. So if we're looking at children and kind of saying, it's your fault that you haven't contributed, it's your fault that, you don't have a sense of duty to the world, but it's up to us to allow them the opportunity to do that. So as a parent, I would say, don't wrap your children up in a bubble. Allow them to experience. So, experience the world. So when they're children, when they're babies, they're toddlers, they start to walk, and we'll lift them up, and they'll fall down, and we'll lift them up and let them take 3 more steps, and they'll fall down, and then we'll lift them up, and they'll take 4 more steps until they get to the point where they're lifting themselves up and they're walking themselves. And we need to continue that through life. So it's okay for our children to learn that once things don't go their way, they have the ability to get back up. So don't always jump in to rescue your child. Maybe try and ask them. If you have a 6, 7-year-old and they get bullied in school, obviously that is a horrible thing, and no parent wants their child to be bullied. But instead of jumping in with, this is what we're going to do, maybe the important thing to do is to actually sit down and allow them to come up with some ideas of what they'd like to do. Because what you don't want is, right, that's it. Little Johnny over the road is after bullying my child. I'm going to go over and I'm going to punch Johnny's dad in the face, and I might give Johnny a slap as well. And your child is standing there going, oh my God, I'm going to be absolutely pulverized in school tomorrow. Maybe the right thing for them is that what they need is to come up with a solution that might work for them. So ask them, well, okay, you've just been bullied by Johnny. Well, what do you want to do about this? And your child may turn around and say, okay, I want you to go over to Johnny's dad, punch him square in the face, and punch Johnny while you're at it. But in reality, okay, it's an option, but let's just hope that Johnny's dad isn't Conor McGregor. So I think what we need to do is sit down, empathize with them, let them know, what's happened to them is not okay, but at the same time, ask them, what do you want to do about it? You might get the answer of, I don't know. I actually don't know what to do. So that's when you jump in and you can give them maybe 4 or 5 different options and ask them to pick the option that works best for them, or might work best for them. And let them try to put it into practice. And practice is the important part, where it's, okay, well, let's Talk it out. So you want to go and say to Johnny, don't hit me anymore. I don't like it. And they get to put it into practice with you so that they feel comfortable in how they're going to react and what they're going to say. And then let them go and do it. And let there be no weight behind their choice. So if it doesn't work out and you're sitting there going, I know this isn't going to work. This is definitely not going to work. It's not the right thing to do. What is important is the process. It's not the outcome. So it might not work. But what's important is you don't turn around to your child and say, see, I told you this wouldn't work, because that is only going to push them down lower and make them think that, okay, I actually can't think for myself. I actually can't come up with my own ideas. So let them put it into practice and don't put weight behind it. So let your kids fall. Don't always pick them up. It's okay if they, learn to lift themselves up. But be there to support them if and when you need them. If and when they need you. I hope that helps. Resilience is one of those hard things, I think. We all want to instill it in our children, but yet we have this natural reaction where we want to just jump in and maybe rescue them. And, no one wants their child to feel any pain or suffering, but it's part of life. I do an interview podcast, and I remember speaking to a friend of mine, actually, and he spoke about, being brought up where he never really experienced anything negative. His parents kind of shielded him from all the horrible stuff, and in their mind they were doing the best thing. And I suppose for a lot of us, maybe it was the right thing to do. But he went off to college, and he said, all of a sudden people didn't actually care what he thought, or people weren't always looking out for him. And he said it was like somebody just picked up a baseball bat and hit him across the head. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know what he had to put in place to actually deal with somebody, sometimes physically hitting him square in the face, sometimes metaphorically hitting him in the face. So I think it's important that, we allow our children the space to experience things that are not always positive, but that we support them to help them make a change for themselves that's going to work for them. And in the long run, as hard as it might be, in the long run, they're going to build up those resilient skills. Okay, it's time for my sup of coffee. Dave, what are you saying to me? Reminds me of part of the Michael Jordan quote. I failed over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. Absolutely spot on, Dave. You're so hitting the nail on the head there. I think it's really, really important because, and I suppose in Ireland we live in a culture where if you fail, that people view you as a failure sometimes. Whereas in other countries, it's okay to fail and fail and fail and fail. It's all right. Because what you're doing is you're learning. Like, I don't believe in generally having regrets. I think it's important that we don't have regrets about things. If we make mistakes as parents, which we are all going to do, there is no such thing as a perfect parent. But if we make mistakes as parents, we can apologize for it. It's actually quite empowering for children to have a parent turn around and say, I'm sorry, I overreacted. I didn't actually, I was, I'm under stress and things are busy and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to shout at you or, ground you for life. It's not actually practical. So yeah, Dave, we all need to fail, but I think that's what we learn. And maybe you should be sitting here doing this job for me. Okay, I got another question here. Hi, my 7-year-old son raised a chick from an egg he hatched at school last year. He was very close to the hen and called himself her daddy, but unfortunately it was killed by an animal last night. I don't know how to deal with his grief. He seems fine one minute, then the next he starts talking about his chicken and crying. I just wondered if you had any suggestions about dealing with death of a pet for a child. He knows about heaven, but I don't think he really understands. So we told him he can dream about his chicken at night, but he's still really sad. He has a few feathers that were left and carries them with him and talks to them like they are his chicken, and he says he's pretending that his hen is still alive. Is this normal and okay? Any help would be greatly appreciated. From Jenny. That's sad. The loss of a pet is really tough. It's really tough on adults, but it's really, really tough on kids because sometimes this can be their first experience of death, that there is finality, and it can be very overwhelming for children to deal with. I suppose the first thing is to let him know that it's okay to be sad. It's absolutely okay to be sad. I think sometimes, and especially with boys, we try to get them to man up. And I'm not saying that, Jenny, that you're doing this, but, as they get older, it's man up and, don't feel your emotion. But it's absolutely okay to be sad about things, because we grow attached to pets, we grow attached to family members. It's all right to feel that grief. So let them cry it out. It's absolutely okay. I suppose what you don't need to do is create a false hope where, oh, well, the hen might come back. He's gone, and it's part of life. And it's one of those things that he's going to learn an awful lot about himself, and he's also going to learn an awful lot about life by having this happen. It's very sad, and it's absolutely normal for him to want the hen to be alive, because it's only a couple of days since it happened. None of us know how long grief is going to take to deal with. So for some people it will be, a couple of weeks. For other people it will be, maybe 6 months, a year. We just never know. So it's absolutely all right for your child to experience this grief. It's only brand new. And maybe you guys could set up a little, a little shrine or something for where you can put the feathers, and he can go and he can have a chat about what's going on for him to the hen, and see how that goes for him. I think ultimately what you want is that it's okay for him to feel the feelings, and that if and when he is ready in the future, you can look at maybe another pet. But it's okay for him to cry it out. So let me see. I think I got one more question. Any questions from those watching? Hello to everybody. Okay, let me see. I got one here. My 14-year-old won't get out of bed. This is such a typical thing to hear. My 14-year-old won't get out of bed and says he doesn't want to go to school. I'm really worried because he was in transition year and he's in third year and is about to do the state exams. What can I do to get him moving? I suppose for a lot of parents, it can be very difficult to deal with. I will always say 14 is the roughest age for everyone. It's the roughest age for parents. It's also the roughest age for children, because they're no longer kids, but they're not adults, and they haven't fully developed. There's a reason we don't allow alcohol into the system until 18, or in America 21. It's because our brains haven't fully developed. So at 14, we haven't got the maturity, we haven't got the understanding of the world, but yet sometimes physically we can be big enough. Sometimes, we can start to look at the world around us and say, well, I actually have choices that I can make about myself, so I can decide whether to go to school or not. So you have a few options. One, what is your child doing when he's refusing to get out of bed? Does he have access to a phone? Does he have access to a console? Does he have access to a laptop? Is there any reason for him to stay in bed? Because that's the first thing I would suggest, is cutting out those options. Make it as uncomfortable as possible for him to stay in bed in the house. So if he is going to stay around the house, give him 20 jobs, give him 30 jobs, whatever it might be. If he refuses, it's okay to ring the school and get some advice off them, because, it's in everyone's interest to have your child in school. It's in his best interest. And sometimes we need to be proactive and say, okay, I'm going to get as many supports around me as possible in order to get my child moving. So what I would suggest is go and speak to your school. If it is a major issue, I would maybe speak to your local community Gardaí and get them to come and have a chat with your son about the impact, or the Education Welfare Office. Go and contact them and say, look, this is happening. I'm struggling with what to do with my son. But first things first is cut out any possible thing that is going to make him feel comfortable in bed. I'm not adverse to suggesting getting a bucket of water and pouring it over his head, because no one wants to lie in a wet bed. Now, he might go nuts and crazy, and that's up to you. But it's something I've done in the past with teenagers who wouldn't get out of bed on a residential trip. And I gave them the warning. I said, look, there's going to be a bucket of water coming over your head if you don't get up out of the bed. And they didn't, so they got a bucket of water over their head and they were up pretty quick. And also look at, okay, what are they actually contributing around the house? Because if they're just lying around the house all day, they're not making any contribution, and that's not okay. So it's important that you do start to look at, okay, these are the things that we're going to do in this house right now. We're going to actually make the changes, that you cannot just lie around the house all day. So I hope that's of some help. It's a very difficult one. If that's not working, do drop me an email and I will converse with you back and forth. Okay, Josephine, how are you, Josephine? I hope you're well. Thanks for the question. How do you get a 2-year-old to sleep? He's my 5th child. Can't remember how I dealt with it when the others were small. He hasn't slept much in over 2 months. Oh, Josephine, I'd say you definitely need this cup of coffee this morning. Sleeping is a very, very common issue for a lot of parents. And I suppose there's a couple of practical things you can look at. You know, I suppose at 2 years of age, they're probably coming out of that nap time during the day, but maybe still having a nap. So maybe look at reducing the actual amount of time. If there is an afternoon nap, reduce the afternoon nap. Now, some parents would say to me, yeah, but they get cranky then kind of about 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. But I suppose the purpose is the nighttime sleep. That's the most important sleep for them. At some stage, the afternoon nap is going to have to go. It's going to have to be gone altogether, because they'll have creche, they'll have Montessori school, they'll have primary school to get it to. So I would suggest looking at the afternoon nap, if there is one, and reducing that time by maybe 10, 15 minutes and see how that goes. Then the other practical things are they getting enough exercise? Are they able to run around? You know, are they able to be stimulated and go through that process and making sure that the afternoon is nice and busy for them, so that they're starting to, I suppose, to use up as much. He doesn't nap some days, okay, so, and it would be interesting to see if that has an impact on the night before, or sorry, on the night ahead. But also looking at, as I say, keep them active, but then start the nighttime routine where there's a wind down, where there's not, you know, sometimes kids will watch the TV in the evening because it helps to kind of settle them. But look at what they're watching on the TV or the tablet, whatever it might be. Sometimes fast-moving, constant cartoons and stuff like that can actually wake up the brain. It's the same, you know, I would always advocate not having a TV or a tablet in a bedroom for children, because the screen actually wakes them up. It actually wakes up their brain. But look at having a routine, and maybe look at having a star chart around, okay, if you go to, you know, stick with the routine, you get a star, and then they get, you know, a reward at the end of the week or whatever it might be. Now, 2 is quite young, and some people would say, well, they don't necessarily understand, but it's good at starting this process of them starting to learn that if I do what is needed, there'll be a reward coming my way. And then you can slowly phase it out when it's become the routine. I hope you do get some sleep tonight, Josephine. Again, with any of this stuff, please do come back to me, guys. If what I'm suggesting maybe isn't working, and we can look at tweaking it, you know. So do come back. I hope that's of some help, Josephine. Anita, how are you? It's good to see you. What should a single mum do whose young teen son is now bigger than her and pushing her about, thinking he's the boss of the house and dictating the pace at home? Wow, that's tough. The first thing I would say is that it's never okay to be physically aggressive, right? It's never okay for a parent to be physically aggressive to a child, and it's never okay for a child to be physically aggressive towards an adult. So I would look at what is it that he's doing. Is he being physically aggressive? Because if he is, I would suggest and he's not responding to you putting consequences in place for him. So if he's just basically bullying you, I would look at the supports around you. Who can I get to help me deal with this? Is there an uncle or a grandparent or someone that he looks up to, a grandmother or whatever, that you can get to support you in this process? The other thing I would suggest is phone your local Gardaí. If he is being physically aggressive, pick up that phone. Because kids need boundaries, and they need to know that somebody will stop them from going too far, because they can't stop themselves. So if he's not responding, if he's not responding to you and what you're putting in place to stop this, you do need that support. And he needs to know that there is a line that cannot be crossed. And that line needs to be maybe that he gets a caution from the guards. You know, maybe it's that somebody comes around and has a conversation with them and say, this is not okay, and if it continues, this is what's going to happen, and lays it out to him. But as long as you get that support put in place, also look at your consequences. Sometimes when we feel under threat, or sometimes when we feel like we're being bullied and it's in our home, what we do is we'll try to keep the peace. So we'll do whatever it takes to keep the peace. So they say, I want a new phone. And we think, okay, well, if I don't get it, he's going to go crazy and he's going to do X, Y, and Z. So I'll just do it. But what that's actually doing is rewarding the negative behavior. And going back to small children, when we reward the negative behavior, you know, any negative attention is better than no attention. So absolutely don't reward that negative attention with something positive. So I hope that helps. But look at getting support around you, and then don't be afraid to pick up the phone to the police. And it's one of those things that, you know, it's an exceptionally difficult thing to do. No parent wants to have to ring and, you know, get their child brought into a police station and questioned. You know, that's not where we envisage ourselves when we become parents. But it's a part of life, and sometimes they need to understand that this is not okay. And, you know, what happens when your child gets to 18 and you haven't dealt with it, and they move out and they find, you know, a girlfriend and do the same to them? Or, you know, they're living with friends and they do the same to them. Not everybody's going to let them away with it. And sometimes that's when you're getting a phone call from a hospital and your 19-year-old is lying there with, you know, who's after suffering with a severe beating. So this is not just about you and your home and keeping yourself safe. It's also about your child and where they might go. But all you can do is try your best. Okay, and I know it's a very, very difficult situation. And I know sometimes it can be very, very hard and heartbreaking. You know, our little angel goes out the door one day, comes back a devil. That's very difficult to deal with. So I hope that's of some help, Anita. So what are we on? 28 minutes. Wow, we've gone well over the allocated time. But look, what we'll do is we'll finish it up there. I want to say thank you very much to everybody who joined in, and please share this. It'll be great to get the word out there. It's completely free. It's free advice if it's of use to people. So share it around. I'm going to do this certainly on a monthly basis, maybe even fortnightly, depending on how much people actually enjoy it. So please do send back your comments, and yeah, keep liking and sharing. Help me to parent. Thanks very much, guys.